Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the quiet hearth. Tonight, we are traveling far to the north, to the frozen fjords of Scandinavia in the year 800 AD. We often think of Vikings as warriors, but tonight we will see them differently. We will see how they survived the brutal, sunless winters inside their great wooden longhouses. No battles, no raids, just the quiet struggle against the cold. But before we step into the snow, I have a small question for you. I am always fascinated to know where our community is resting tonight. Where are you listening from? Are you tucked into a warm bed in a busy city? Or are you somewhere quiet, listening to the rain or snow outside your own window? And what time is it there? Let me know in the comments below. I read every story you share. And if these quiet journeys help you find peace, please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps us keep the fire burning and brings more forgotten histories to life. But now, put your phone aside. Let your shoulders drop. Take a deep breath. You are safe here. Imagine a world of white snow, dark forests, and a single warm light glowing in the distance. Let's go back to the longhouse, to the fire, to the Viking winter. You stand in the darkness, knee-deep in snow, facing a structure that seems almost alive. The longhouse before you sits low against the earth, its curved roof arching like the hull of an overturned ship. This is no accident. The Vikings who built this home understood something fundamental about survival in the north, that a building must bend, must flow with the wind rather than fight it. The blizzard whips around you now, stinging your face with ice crystals. But watch how the snow behaves as it meets this dwelling. The wind drives it upward, following the gentle curve of the roof, carrying the snow over and beyond rather than letting it settle and accumulate. Throughout the long winter months, this shape will shed thousands of pounds of snow, preventing the roof from collapsing under impossible weight. Move closer now. Run your hand along the outer wall if you can bear to remove your glove for just a moment. The surface is rough, made of layered turf, thick blocks of earth held together by grass roots, stacked like enormous bricks. Each block is perhaps 2 feet long, 1 foot wide, weighing more than a man could comfortably carry. Hundreds of these blocks form walls that are 3 feet thick in places. This is insulation that no modern foam or fiberglass could match. The earth itself, cut from the summer meadows and dried through autumn, now serves as a barrier between the warmth of human life inside and the killing cold that surrounds you. Between these turf blocks, the builders packed moss, dried grass, even seaweed brought up from the fjords, every gap filled, every crack sealed. Notice something else as you walk slowly around the building's perimeter. There are no windows, none. In summer, this might seem like a prison, but now, in the heart of winter, every opening is a place where precious heat could escape. The Vikings chose darkness over cold. They chose survival over convenience. The wind picks up and you can barely see the outline of the longhouse now through the driving snow. But there, at one end, a faint orange glow leaks around the edges of the door. Smoke rises from a hole in the roof, quickly scattered by the wind. Inside there is fire. Inside there is life. You approach the door now. It is a massive thing, made of oak planks as thick as your forearm, bound together with iron straps that the village blacksmith hammered out over countless hours at his forge. The wood is dark with age and smoke, worn smooth by hundreds of hands that have pushed it open over the years. There is no door handle as you would recognize it. Instead, a length of rope passes through a hole in the door. You grasp it. Even through your gloves, you can feel how the rope has been worn thin by use, and you pull. The door resists. Ice has formed around its edges, sealing it shut. You pull harder, and with a crack that sounds like breaking bones, the ice gives way. The door swings inward, and immediately you feel it. A wall of warmth that seems almost solid, pushing back against the cold wind trying to force its way inside. You step through quickly and someone behind you. You didn't even realize anyone was there. Helps push the door closed again. It shuts with a heavy thud, and suddenly the howl of the wind becomes muffled, distant, as if the storm is happening in another world. Your eyes need a moment to adjust. After the blue-white emptiness of the blizzard, the dim interior seems almost black, but slowly shapes emerge. The first thing you notice is the fire, a long fire pit running down the center of the room, perhaps 30 feet in length. The flames are low now, just coals really, but they cast a warm, pulsing light across everything. The smoke rises in lazy columns, drifting up toward the roof where it escapes through the smoke hole you saw from outside. But much of it lingers, hanging in layers near the ceiling, creating a haze that makes the far end of the longhouse seem impossibly distant. The warmth is almost overwhelming after the cold outside. You can feel your cheeks beginning to burn, that painful tingling that comes when frozen flesh remembers what warmth is. You resist the urge to rush toward the fire. You know somehow that this would be dangerous, that your fingers and toes need to warm slowly, gently, or you risk permanent damage. Instead, you stand just inside the door, letting your eyes continue their adjustment. The longhouse is exactly that, long. It stretches away from you, perhaps 80 feet from one end to the other, but only 20 feet wide. The ceiling is low, supported by massive wooden posts that run down either side of the fire pit. These posts are carved with interlocking patterns, dragons and serpents, and not work that seems to move in the flickering firelight. Along both walls, you can now make out raised platforms. These are the sleeping benches, built about 3 feet off the ground. The space beneath them is used for storage. You can see the outlines of barrels, chests, tools, and weapons tucked away in the shadows. The benches themselves are covered with furs and woven blankets. Some are piled so thick that they look like soft mountains. These are the beds where entire families sleep, clustered together for warmth. You notice something else now: the smell. It is not unpleasant, but it is strong. Wood smoke, certainly, that's the dominant scent. But beneath it, there's the earthy smell of the turf walls, the animal musk of the furs, the tang of dried fish hanging from the rafters, the faint sweetness of ale from an open barrel near the fire. This is not a house as you might think of one. This is a vessel of survival, a cave hollowed from the hostile world, a space where life can persist when everything outside is trying to kill it. Someone gestures for you to come closer to the fire. You move closer to the fire now, your steps slow and careful on the packed earth floor. The flames have burned down to a bed of coals that pulse with an inner light, orange deepening to red, then fading to gray at the edges before flaring bright again as a breath of air passes over them. This is not a fireplace as you might know it. There is no hearth stone, no mantelpiece, no contained box of brick or iron. Instead, the fire burns in a long trench that has been dug directly into the floor, running like a river of heat down the center of the longhouse. It is perhaps 3 feet wide and runs for 30 feet or more, dividing the space in half. The edges of this fire pit have been lined with flat stones, worn smooth by years of heat and use. Some of these stones are cracked, split by the countless cycles of heating and cooling. Others bear dark stains, the ghosts of spilled stew, melted fat, blood from butchered animals prepared for cooking. Above the coals, iron chains hang from the roof beams, and from these chains dangle cooking pots, great cauldrons of blackened iron. One still contains something. You can see steam rising from it, though the contents are impossible to identify in this light. Perhaps it is water being kept hot. Perhaps it is the remnants of the evening meal, kept warm for anyone who wakes hungry in the night. Look up now at the ceiling. The smoke from the fire rises in pillars, but it does not escape cleanly. Instead, it spreads out when it reaches the roof, forming a layer that hangs there like a gray blanket suspended in the air. This layer is perhaps 3 feet thick, occupying the space between the roof peak and the top of the carved support posts. If you were to stand fully upright, your head would enter this layer of smoke. Your eyes would water, your throat would burn. You would cough and bend back down, seeking the clearer air below. The Vikings know this. They have built their sleeping benches, their sitting areas, their entire living space in the zone beneath the smoke. They have learned to exist in the narrow band where life is possible. The smoke moves slowly, drifting toward the hole in the roof that you saw from outside. But much of it seems to linger, as if reluctant to leave the warmth of the room for the killing cold beyond. It swirls in lazy patterns, illuminated from below by the fire's glow. In the dark corners of the longhouse, The smoke is thick enough that you cannot see the far wall at all. It simply fades into shadow and haze. The smell of the smoke is complex. There is the sharp, clean scent of burning pine, the resin popping occasionally, sending tiny sparks upward into the smoke layer. There is the earthier smell of birch, which burns slower, sustaining the fire through the long hours when no one tends it. Beneath these, there is the ghost of peat smoke, that distinctive smell of burning earth. For when wood runs low, the Vikings will burn anything that can keep the cold at bay. But there are other smells woven into the smoke as well. The acrid tang of burned fish, for fish is dried and smoked here throughout the year. The slightly sweet smell of scorched grain from the bread baked on flat stones beside the fire. The fatty, savory scent of roasted meat, though no meat cooks now. It is the memory of countless meals absorbed into the wooden walls, the roof thatch, even the smoke-stained clothing of the people who live here. You can feel the heat of the coals now, radiating against your legs and face. It is not an even warmth. The side of you facing the fire feels almost too hot, while your back remains cold. You understand now why the sleeping benches are positioned as they are, far enough from the fire to avoid the harsh, direct heat, but close enough to catch the warmth that radiates outward. Someone has placed fresh logs beside the fire pit, split lengths of pine and birch, stacked neatly within arm's reach. But no one moves to add them yet. The night is still early. The coals will be enough for now. When the cold hours before dawn arrive, when the temperature outside drops to its lowest point, then someone will wake, some internal clock alerting them, and they will add wood, building the flames back up to hold back the deepest cold. The coals shift slightly, settling with a whisper. A small flame licks up from a crack in one of the logs that hasn't quite finished burning. It dances for a moment, blue at its base, yellow at its tip, then subsides back into the general glow. This fire has burned here for months. Since autumn came and the decision was made to close up the longhouse for winter, someone has kept these coals alive, day and night. To let the fire go out would be catastrophic. Yes, it could be relit. The Vikings know how to strike sparks from flint and iron, how to nurse a tiny ember into flame. But in the deep cold, with numb fingers and everything damp from snow and ice, starting a fire from nothing could take hours. Hours in which the cold would seep back into the longhouse, undoing days of accumulated warmth. So the fire is never allowed to die. It is tended like a living thing, fed, watched, kept breathing. It is the heart of the longhouse, the source of all light, all warmth, all cooked food. Without it, this would just be a dark cave filled with freezing air. You move around the fire now, edging past it toward the sleeping areas. The floor is uneven here, worn down by countless feet over countless winters. In some places, it is smooth as glass. In others, You must step carefully over roots or stones that protrude from the packed earth. The sleeping bench runs along the wall like a wide shelf, built about 3 feet off the ground. It is perhaps 6 feet deep, extending from the outer wall almost to the row of support posts that line the fire pit. The platform itself is made of split logs, laid side by side and smoothed somewhat by use, though you can still feel the slight gaps between them, the occasional rough edge that catches at clothing. But you can barely see the wood of the platform at all, because it is buried under layers of furs and blankets. Start at the bottom. There are sheepskins, many of them, spread with the wool side up. Your hand sinks into this wool when you touch it. It is thick, perhaps 2 inches deep, matted from use but still springy, still insulating. The natural oils in the wool have never been fully washed out, and you can smell that distinctive lanolin scent, slightly waxy, mixed with the smell of the smoke that has permeated everything in this space. On top of the sheepskins are larger furs. You can identify wolf fur by touch, coarser than the sheep's wool, the individual hairs longer and more wiry. There are bear furs too, massive things that must have required incredible courage to obtain. The bear fur is thick enough that your fingers disappear completely when you press down. It is like sinking your hand into deep snow, except this snow is warm, alive with trapped body heat from the people who slept here before. At the back of the sleeping bench against the turf wall, there are pillows of a sort. They are leather bags stuffed with down, with dried moss, with anything soft that could be gathered. They are lumpy, uneven, but they serve their purpose, to keep your head slightly elevated, to keep you from rolling backward into the cold wall. Over all of this are blankets. They are woven from wool, thick and heavy, stiff with age and smoke. The weaving is tight, meant to block the movement of air rather than to be soft or comfortable. When you lift one of these blankets, you are surprised by its weight. It must weigh 20 pounds or more, and when you let it fall back onto the furs, it lands with a soft whump, raising a small cloud of dust and smoke particles. These blankets are not beautiful. There are no intricate patterns, no carefully dyed colors. They are natural wool, ranging from cream to dark brown to almost black, woven in simple stripes or checks. They are tools, not decorations. Their purpose is to trap heat, to create a layer of dead air between the cold world and the sleeping bodies beneath them. You sit on the edge of the sleeping bench now, and immediately you feel the accumulated warmth of the furs beneath you. Even though no one has lain here for some time, the thick layers have retained heat from the fire, from the bodies that rested here earlier. It is like sitting on something alive. The position of this sleeping bench is not random. It is far enough from the fire that you will not be roasted in your sleep, but close enough that the radiant warmth reaches you. It is raised off the ground, where the coldest air settles, and it is built against the outer wall, the thick turf wall that, while cold on the other side provides a solid backing that will not shift or settle in the night. You swing your legs up onto the platform and lie back. Immediately, you sink into the furs. The sheepskin compresses beneath your weight, forming a perfect mold of your body. The wolf and bear furs settle over you with that same heavy presence. Now reach for the blanket, pull it up over yourself. Its weight is immediate and reassuring. It presses down on you, not uncomfortably, but with enough force that you feel held, contained, safe. The edges of the blanket are frayed, the weave loosened by years of use, but the center is still tight, still functional. In the darkness of the sleeping bench, tucked against the wall with layers of fur below and heavy wool above, you understand something fundamental about Viking survival. This is not about comfort. It is about creating a microclimate, a small pocket of warmth in a world of cold. The furs trap your body heat. The blanket holds it close. The raised platform keeps you above the coldest air. The smoke layer above acts as another layer of insulation, however unpleasant it might be. Around you, in other sleeping benches along both walls, you can hear the quiet sounds of people already asleep. Someone snores softly. Someone else turns over, the furs rustling with the movement. A child murmurs something in their sleep. These are not private bedrooms. Privacy is a luxury that cannot exist here. But there is something comforting about the presence of others, about knowing that you are not alone in the darkness, that if the cold somehow broke through all these defenses, there would be others here, awake, aware, ready to tend the fire and hold back the night. The light from the fire flickers against the underside of the smoke layer, casting moving shadows across the ceiling beams. The carved dragons seem almost to writhe in this uncertain light. Your eyes grow heavy watching them. Before you can truly rest, before you can surrender to the warmth of the furs and the weight of the blankets, you must first remove the armor you wear against the cold. Not armor of iron or steel, though that exists here too, hanging on pegs driven into the support posts, but armor of fabric and hide, of wool and leather, the layers that have kept you alive in the world outside. Start with the outermost layer. Your cloak is made of thick wool, woven so tightly that it can shed light rain and snow. The wool has been fulled, beaten and worked until the fibers mesh together into something almost like felt. It is heavy across your shoulders, this cloak, perhaps weighing 15 pounds when dry, even more when wet with snow. The wool is naturally greasy with lanolin, and this oil has never been fully washed out. It is this oil that makes water bead on the surface rather than soak through. You unfasten the bronze brooch that holds the cloak closed at your right shoulder. The metal is cold to touch, even here inside the longhouse. The pin slides free, and you fold the cloak carefully, laying it on the edge of the sleeping bench where it can continue to dry from any moisture it collected during your time outside. Beneath the cloak is your tunic, also wool but of a different sort. Where the cloak is thick and tightly woven, the tunic wool is slightly looser, designed to trap air between its fibers. The tunic reaches to your knees and is dyed a deep reddish brown using madder root. Not for beauty, though it is handsome enough, but because dyed wool seems to wear better than undyed, and everything here must last through many winters. The wool is scratchy against your skin. This is not the soft merino wool of modern times. This is the coarse outer coat of northern sheep, sheep bred for hardiness rather than comfort. The fibers are thick enough to see individually, and they prick at your neck and wrists where the tunic touches bare skin. You have long since stopped noticing this constant irritation. It is simply part of existence, like the smell of smoke or the taste of salt. But you do not wear the wool directly against your skin. Beneath the tunic is a layer of linen, an under-tunic that reaches almost to your knees. Linen made from flax that was grown and harvested during the brief summer, soaked in streams until the fibers separated, beaten and spun, and woven by hands that never seem to stop working. The linen is not soft, it is stiff and slightly rough, but it is smoother than the wool, and it absorbs the sweat from your skin, keeping the precious wool outer layer drier. The linen is dingy now, gray with age and smoke and imperfect washing. In summer, it might have been taken down to the fjord and beaten against rocks in cold water, then spread on bushes to dry in the endless daylight. But that was months ago. Now it carries the accumulated scent of your body, of the smoke, of all the days and nights since the cold came. You pull the wool tunic over your head, careful not to disturb those already sleeping nearby. The air hits your linen-covered torso, and you feel immediately colder, even here close to the fire. You understand now why people sleep fully dressed in the deepest winter. The effort of removing and replacing layers is too costly in lost heat. But tonight the fire is strong, the longhouse adequately warm, and you continue undressing. The linen undertunic follows, pulled over your head and folded atop the wool. For a moment you stand in the firelight in nothing but your leg coverings and undergarments, and the cool air of the longhouse prickles your skin. Your legs are wrapped in long strips of wool, wound from ankle to knee, and held in place with leather thongs. These are not sewn stockings but wound wraps, easier to make and easier to repair when they wear through. You unwrap them slowly, the wool having taken on the shape of your calves, and you can see the depression marks where the leather thongs have pressed into the wool all day. Beneath the wraps are your true socks, and these are different from anything else you wear. They are made using a technique called knallbinding, a single needle method that predates weaving or knitting. The result is a sock that is almost indestructible, thick and slightly stiff, with a texture that is neither knitted nor woven but something older, something that might have been made the same way 1,000 years before this night. The socks are made from wool, but the finest wool available, spun thin and worked tight. They are warm beyond their thickness because the knot-binding technique creates countless tiny air pockets in the fabric. Your feet have been warm all day in these socks, even in the leather boots lined with dried grass that you wore outside. The boots now sit near the door where you left them, packed with more dried grass to help them keep their shape and to absorb any moisture. The grass, timothy and meadow grass, cut in summer and dried in the sun, is changed every few days, the damp grass taken out and dried again by the fire, fresh grass packed in. Without this constant care, the leather would rot, would freeze into rigid, unusable shapes. You keep the socks on. The floor is cold, even here, and the knot-binded wool is thick enough to serve almost as slippers. You settle back onto the sleeping bench, pulling one of the heavy blankets over your linen-covered body, and the warmth of the furs begins to seep into your bones. From somewhere near the fire comes a sound, the scraping of a wooden spoon against the inside of a pot. Someone is eating, and the sound reminds you that you too are hungry. Not desperately so. Hunger is such a constant companion in winter that you have learned to ignore its milder complaints, but hungry enough to consider leaving the warmth of the sleeping bench. You sit up and look toward the fire. Above it, hanging from the rafters, you can see the shapes of fish. Dozens of them, perhaps hundreds, suspended in the smoke layer like strange ornaments. These are stockfish, cod that were caught in the autumn, split open, and hung to dry in the cold air. The drying racks outside the longhouse were full of them for weeks, the fish freezing at night and thawing during the day, slowly losing their moisture until they became hard as wood. Now they hang here, continuing to dry in the smoke, taking on flavors of pine and birch and peat. They will keep for months, even years if necessary. A person could break off a piece of stockfish and chew it directly, but the usual method is to pound it with a stone until the fibers separate, then soak it in water or milk to soften it before cooking. You can see one fish hanging lower than the others, within reach of someone sitting by the fire. Its tail has been broken off already, someone's meal from earlier in the evening. The remaining body of the fish is gray-white, mummified by salt and smoke and time. It looks like it could never have been alive, could never have swum in the cold waters of the North Atlantic. But you know the taste, slightly fishy but not strongly so, the texture somewhere between dried meat and very hard cheese when properly prepared. Beside the fire, resting on one of the heated stones, is a flat piece of bark serving as a plate. On it sits a slab of dried meat, probably reindeer or sheep, preserved in salt until the salt formed visible crystals on the surface. Someone has sliced this meat thin. It is too tough to bite through any other way, and the slices glisten slightly with fat in the firelight. Next to the meat is a piece of bread, if you can call it that. It is flat bread, made from barley flour ground on stones, mixed with water and salt, then cooked on a hot stone by the fire. It is hard and dense, not risen with yeast but compressed under its own weight as it cooked. The bread is dark brown, almost black in places where it touched the hottest part of the stone. It will last for weeks without molding, but it requires strong teeth to eat. You must soak it in liquid, water, ale, even the fat from cooked meat, before you can bite through it. The person by the fire, you can see now it is a young man, perhaps 16 or 17, notices you watching and gestures toward the food. There is plenty, his gesture says. You are welcome to share. This is the way here. Individual ownership of food is meaningless when survival depends on the group. The fish were caught by many hands. The meat was butchered and preserved through communal effort. The grain was ground by whoever had the strength to push the heavy stone. All of it belongs to everyone and no one. You rise from the sleeping bench, careful not to step on anyone, and move toward the fire. The young man hands you a wooden bowl. It is carved from a single piece of birch, worn smooth by countless meals, darkened by years of oil and food stains. In the bowl is a thick stew, or perhaps it is more accurate to call it a broth. The stockfish has been broken apart and simmered with dried wild onions, some turnips from the storage pit, and precious barley grains that puff and soften in the hot liquid. You accept a wooden spoon as smooth as the bowl from use and taste the stew. It is hot, almost too hot, but you welcome this. The flavor is strong, heavily salted from the preserved fish, slightly sweet from the turnips, earthy from the onions. It is not subtle or complex, but it is warm and it is nourishing. And in this place and time, that is all food needs to be. The young man hands you something else, a horn cup filled with liquid. You bring it to your lips and taste mead, honey wine that was brewed in the autumn when the last of the honey could be harvested. It is not the clear, sweet mead of summer. By now it has darkened, thickened slightly, developed flavors of fermentation that edge toward vinegar. But it is warm. Someone has heated it by dropping hot stones from the fire into the barrel, and it brings a spreading warmth to your chest and belly that the stew alone could not provide. You eat slowly, letting the food warm you from inside while the fire warms you from without. The bread, when soaked in the stew, becomes soft enough to chew. The dried meat, broken into small pieces and added to the bowl, softens just enough to release its flavors, salt and smoke, and the faint gaminess of whatever animal it came from. Around you, others are settling in for the night. The routine is familiar to everyone. Eat if you are hungry. Bank the fire before true sleep. Make sure the door is properly closed. Check that the smoke hole is not blocked with snow. These small tasks done, you can rest. You finish the stew and return the bowl to the stone where it will be rinsed with hot water in the morning. The warmth from the food and mead spreads through your body, and suddenly the sleeping bench calls to you with renewed strength. You make your way back to it, Climb onto the furs, pull the heavy blanket over yourself, and let your body sink into the accumulated warmth. From the far end of the longhouse, beyond where the fire's light can fully reach, comes a sound that is not quite human. It is a deep, slow exhalation, the breath of something much larger than a person. Then another breath and another, forming a rhythm that underlies all the other sounds of the night. The animals are here with you, not outside in separate barns or shelters, but here, inside this same structure, sharing this same air, this same warmth. At the far end of the longhouse, separated from the human living area by a partial wall of stacked turf and wood, the livestock spend their winter. 2 cows, perhaps 5 or 6 sheep, maybe a goat. The precise number changes from year to year, depending on what the summer grazing could support, what could be preserved through the autumn slaughter. The animals that remain, the ones judged strong enough to survive until spring, the breeding stock that will be needed when the world thaws. These animals live here now, in the dark end of the longhouse, in stalls piled deep with hay that was cut and dried during the brief summer months. Listen carefully and you can distinguish the sounds. The cows breathe slowly, deeply, each breath a long rumble of air through large nostrils. They shift occasionally, hooves scraping against the packed earth floor, and you can hear the rustling of straw as they settle their weight. The sheep breathe faster, lighter, and they move more frequently, pressing against each other for warmth even in this sheltered space. The smell from that end of the longhouse is strong. It is the smell of animals, of course, that deep, earthy scent of large bodies, of wool and hide and animal warmth. But it is not entirely unpleasant. Mixed with the animal smell is the sweet, dry scent of hay, meadow grass that still carries within it the memory of summer sun. And beneath that, the sharper smell of manure, though this is managed carefully. Each day someone must muck out the stalls, carrying the frozen waste outside to pile where it will eventually be spread on fields when spring comes. For now it fertilizes nothing but adds to the ever-growing mound behind the longhouse. But the animals do more than smell and make noise. They provide something essential to survival: heat. Each cow is a furnace, a living source of warmth. Their large bodies, fed on hay and what little grain can be spared, generate heat through the simple process of digestion and life. The heat radiates from them, warming the air around them, and this warm air does not stay trapped in their end of the longhouse. It rises, spreads, flows over the partial wall and into the living space. On the coldest nights, when the temperature outside drops so low that exposed skin would freeze in minutes, when the wind drives through every crack and gap in the turf walls, the heat from these animals makes the difference between survival and slow freezing. The Vikings know this. It is why, despite the smell, despite the noise, despite the constant work of feeding and cleaning, the animals live here in the longhouse rather than in separate barns. Sometimes, on nights when the cold is truly terrible, people will move their sleeping areas closer to the animal end. Children especially will be sent to sleep near the cows, wrapped in furs and settled into the hay itself, warmed by the ambient heat of the large beasts. The cows tolerate this. They are used to humans, used to being touched and spoken to, used to sharing their space. You can hear the animals settling now. One of the cows exhales with a deep, satisfied sound, almost a groan. Something in that sound speaks of contentment, of a full belly of hay, of being out of the wind and the snow. The sheep have grown quiet, huddled together in their corner. Even the goat, usually the most restless of the animals, has stopped its shuffling. The darkness at that end of the longhouse is nearly complete. The firelight does not reach there, but you know the animals are comfortable with darkness. Unlike humans who need fire to push back the night, the animals live easily in blackness. Their world is one of scent and sound and touch. The darkness holds no terror for them. From the animal quarters comes one more sound, a rhythmic scraping, methodical and slow. Someone is in there with the animals, probably adding more hay to the stalls, making sure the water in the wooden trough has not frozen. The animals must be tended even at night, especially on the coldest nights. Their survival is your survival. If they die, you lose not only their spring calves and lambs, not only their milk and wool, but also their warmth, their living presence that makes this space habitable. The person emerges from the animal area, brushing straw from their clothing. They move to the fire, warming hands that have grown cold from the work, and you see it is an older woman, perhaps 50 years of age, her face lined and weathered by countless winters. She nods to you but says nothing. There is no need for words. The work is done. The animals are settled. Life continues. The evening has deepened now. The fire has been fed. Someone added 2 split logs, and they are beginning to catch, small flames licking up from the coal bed. The new flames cast dancing shadows across the longhouse, and people are gathering. Not everyone. Some are already asleep on the sleeping benches, curled into the furs, their breathing deep and regular. But others are moving to sit closer to the fire, settling onto low stools or simply onto the packed earth floor, backs against the support posts, blankets pulled around shoulders. The children come first, drawn to the fire and to the promise of something beyond the routine of survival. 3 of them, ranging perhaps from 5 years to 10, settle cross-legged near the fire. Their faces are lit from below by the flames, giving them an otherworldly appearance, all shadows and light with no in-between. Adults follow. The young man who shared his food with you earlier. A woman nursing an infant, the baby barely visible beneath the thick shawl wrapped around them both. 2 men, their beards already graying, who lower themselves carefully onto stools with the stiffness of old injuries or years of hard labor. And finally, the elder. He is not the oldest person in the Longhouse. That distinction belongs to a woman who lies on one of the sleeping benches, too frail to rise but still breathing, still here, still surviving. But this man is the keeper of stories, the one who remembers the tales that must not be forgotten. He is perhaps 60 years old, though age is harder to judge here where life is harsh and faces weather quickly. His beard is mostly white now, long and split into two braids that hang to his chest. His hands, when he extends them toward the fire, are gnarled, the knuckles swollen with the joint disease that comes to those who have worked hard and lived long in the cold. He settles himself slowly onto a stool that has been placed for him, the place of honor closest to the fire but not so close as to be uncomfortable. Someone hands him a horn cup and he drinks, mead again, or perhaps ale. You cannot tell. He drinks slowly, then sets the cup down beside him. For a long moment he simply sits looking into the fire. The others wait. There is no rush. The night is long and there is nowhere to go, nothing to do but rest and be together in the warmth. When he begins to speak, his voice is low, barely above a murmur. It is not the voice of a performer or a skald who shouts verses in the mead hall. This is different. This is the voice of someone speaking to the fire itself, and you must lean forward and strain your ears to hear him. There was a time, he begins and pauses. The words hang in the air, mingling with the smoke. There was a time when the world was younger and the gods walked among the mountains of the north. His Norwegian dialect is thick, the vowels long and the consonants hard, but the meaning is clear enough. This is a story you have heard before, or pieces of it, fragments passed down through generations. But it is a story worth hearing again, especially on a night like this. Odin, he continues, and the name seems to carry weight, seems to make the firelight flicker, though this is surely imagination. Odin had given one eye to the well of wisdom, but even wisdom could not always show him what he needed to see. The old man pauses again, taking another slow sip from his horn cup. One of the children shifts position, trying to get more comfortable, and his mother hushes him with a gentle hand. There was a frost giant, the elder says, who lived far to the north, beyond even where we are now, beyond the edge of the world. His name was Hrimthurs, which means frost ancient, and he was older than memory. You settle back against the sleeping bench behind you, pulling your blanket more tightly around your shoulders. The old man's voice continues, painting pictures in the darkness. Hrimthurs knew secrets that even the gods did not know. He knew why winter came and why it stayed so long, and why sometimes the cold grew so deep that even the sea froze. And Odin wanted this knowledge. The story unfolds slowly. There is no battle, no dramatic confrontation. Instead, it is a tale of Odin traveling north, alone, disguised as an old wanderer. He arrives at the hall of Hrimthurs and asks for shelter from the cold. The frost giant, bound by the ancient laws of hospitality, must take him in. The old man's voice rises and falls like the wind outside, sometimes barely audible, other times clear and strong. He describes the hall of ice where Hrimthurs lived, where the walls were frozen waterfalls and the roof was northern lights made solid. He describes how Odin and the giant sat by a fire that burned blue and cold, rather than red and warm. For 3 days they sat, the elder says, and for 3 days the giant told Odin what he wanted to know: why winter comes, why it stays, why it must come again year after year for all time. One of the children has fallen asleep, head resting on his mother's lap. The others listen, their eyes half closed, the firelight reflecting in them like small distant stars. And when the telling was done, the old man continues, his voice dropping to barely a whisper, Odin thanked the frost giant and prepared to leave. But Hrimthur stopped him. You came for knowledge, he said, but knowledge has a price. You must leave something behind. The elder pauses, and in that pause, one of the logs in the fire shifts, sending up a small shower of sparks that rise into the smoke layer and fade. Odin asked what payment the giant required, and Hrimthur said, give me your memory of summer. Give me your memory of warmth and green things and long daylight. Leave those memories here with me in the cold and dark so that I might have them when you are gone. Another pause. The baby at the mother's breast has stopped nursing and sleeps. The 2 bearded men have their eyes closed, though you cannot tell if they are asleep or simply listening with their eyes shut. And Odin did this thing. He gave up his memories of summer, left them there in the hall of ice. And when he returned to Asgard, he could not remember what warmth felt like, or how green the world could be. All he knew was winter and cold and darkness. The old man stops there. The story, if it is a story, seems unfinished. There is no conclusion, no moral, no ending where things are resolved. But perhaps that is the point. Perhaps this is not a story meant to end, but simply meant to be told, to fill the space between now and sleep. He picks up his horn cup again and drains what remains. Then, slowly, he rises from his stool. No one else moves or speaks. He makes his way to one of the sleeping benches, settles himself into the furs, and within moments, his breathing has joined the chorus of other sleepers. The fire burns lower. The children are lifted carefully and carried to their sleeping spots. The adults drift away one by one until you are among the last remaining, sitting in the firelight, the story still echoing in your mind. Why winter comes, why it stays, why it must return. The last person rises from the fire and makes their way to their sleeping place. You hear the rustle of furs, the creak of the wooden platform, then silence. You are alone now with the fire and the darkness and the sound of breathing all around you. The fire is dying. No one will feed it again until the deepest part of the night, hours from now, when the cold outside reaches its lowest point. For now, the flames have subsided completely. What remains is a bed of coals, glowing orange at their hearts, fading to gray at their edges. The light they cast is barely enough to see by. The support posts fade into shadow. The rafters above disappear completely into smoke and darkness. You watch the coals for a while. They pulse very slightly, brightening and dimming with currents of air too subtle to feel, as if they are breathing along with all the sleeping people around you. One coal splits with a soft tick, and for just a moment a tiny flame appears in the crack, blue at its base, yellow at its tip, before it sinks back into the general glow. The cold is coming. You can feel it beginning to press against the walls, against the door, searching for any gap or crack where it might enter. But the walls hold. The thick turf, the packed moss, the layers of earth and grass roots, they hold back the cold. Not perfectly. You can feel coolness radiating from the wall beside you, can feel the very slight movement of air as warmth rises from the fire and cold air sinks along the outer walls. But it is nothing like the killing wind outside. Outside, listen. The blizzard is still blowing. You can hear it now, a constant low howl, sometimes rising to a shriek as the wind finds some edge of the roof to flow across. Snow is falling, has been falling for hours, will continue falling through the night. By morning, the drifts around the longhouse will be higher. The path to the storage shed will need to be dug out again. The smoke hole might need to be cleared. But that is morning. That is tomorrow. That is a different time, a different world. For now, there is only this moment, this warmth, this darkness, this weight of furs pressing down on you. You settle deeper into the sleeping bench. The sheepskins beneath you have formed themselves to your body, creating a perfect mold. Every part of your back, your shoulders, your hips, your legs, all supported, all cradled by wool that has trapped your body heat and holds it close. The wolf fur above you presses down with gentle insistence. It is heavy, this fur, far heavier than any modern blanket, but the weight is not uncomfortable. Instead, it feels like being held, like being contained in something safe and solid. The weight presses on your chest, your stomach, your legs, and under this pressure, your body begins to release tension you did not know you were holding. Your shoulders. Notice your shoulders. They have been raised slightly, tensed against the cold, against the constant small stresses of survival. Now, under the weight of the fur, they begin to drop. Slowly. So slowly you can barely perceive the movement. The muscles between your shoulder blades lengthen. The tightness across the top of your back spreads and softens and fades. Your breathing. It is already slower than it was when you first lay down, but now it slows even more. Each inhale is a little longer, a little deeper. Each exhale releases a little more fully. The smoke-scented air fills your lungs and you can taste it. The pine, the birch, the distant animal warmth, the lingering scent of the stew you ate earlier. Each breath out carries away a small portion of the day's effort, the day's cold, the day's hunger. The darkness is complete now. The coals have faded to the point where they give no useful light. You cannot see the ceiling above you. You cannot see the wall beside you. If you opened your eyes fully, though they are already half closed, already drifting, you would see nothing but variations of black, shadow upon shadow, darkness within darkness. But you do not need to see. Your other senses tell you everything you need to know. You can hear the steady breathing of the sleepers around you. Someone snores very softly, a gentle rhythmic sound that is almost soothing. The infant who was nursing earlier makes a small sound in its sleep, immediately quieted by its mother's unconscious shifting. One of the cows at the far end of the longhouse exhales deeply, and you hear the rustle of straw as it settles into a more comfortable position. The wind outside continues its endless howling, but it is becoming distant now, as if it is happening in another world, another life. The thick walls muffle it, turn it into something almost like ocean waves, a constant rushing that your mind begins to interpret as silence, as simply the sound that exists when there is no sound. Your jaw, you notice that your jaw has been clenched, your teeth held tight together. Now, under the weight of the furs in the complete darkness, your jaw begins to loosen. Your lips part slightly. Your tongue rests easy in your mouth. The muscles of your face, which have been held in expressions of alertness and attention, now smooth and soften. The cold at your back, radiating from the wall, is no longer uncomfortable. It is simply there, a fact, no more requiring response than the darkness or the sound of breathing. Your body has found its equilibrium. The warmth from the furs, the residual warmth from the fire, your own body heat, all of this exactly balances the cold seeping through the wall. You are neither too hot nor too cold. You are suspended in perfect temperature, in perfect darkness, in perfect stillness. Your legs, they have been tense, ready to move, ready to respond to whatever demands the day might make. Now they grow heavy. The weight of the fur presses them into the sheepskin. The muscles lengthen and release. Your feet, still wrapped in the thick knobbinded socks, are warm. Not hot, but deeply, thoroughly warm, the kind of warmth that reaches into bones. Each breath is longer now, slower. The pause between exhale and the next inhale grows. In that pause there is nothing, no thought, no worry, no awareness of cold or hunger or the long winter still to come. Just the pause, just the stillness, just the darkness. The fire shifts one final time, one coal settling against another with the softest possible sound. A tiny puff of ash rises into the darkness and disperses. The glow dims just a little more. Not gone. The fire will not go out. Someone will tend it in the deep night, but faded to almost nothing. A suggestion of warmth rather than warmth itself. A memory of light rather than light. Your thoughts, which have been following the sounds, the sensations, the slow progression of the evening begin to drift. They become less connected, less logical. An image of summer sun on water, a feeling of warmth on your face, the taste of fresh bread. These thoughts appear and fade like the embers, glowing briefly then sinking back into darkness. Someone turns over in their sleep, the furs rustling. The sound is close, perhaps on the sleeping bench next to yours, but it does not disturb you. Instead, it is comforting, a reminder that you are not alone in the darkness, that others sleep here too, that together you are surviving the unsurvivable, enduring the unendurable. The weight of the furs seems to increase, though they have not grown heavier. It is your body growing lighter beneath them, releasing into the sleeping bench, releasing into the darkness, releasing into the slow rhythm of breath and heartbeat, and the distant howling wind that cannot reach you here. Your breathing barely moves your chest now. Each breath is shallow, effortless, automatic. Your body knows how to breathe. Your body knows how to sleep. You need do nothing. You need only allow it. Allow the darkness. Allow the weight. Allow the release. The wind howls. The fire glows. The walls hold. You are warm. You are safe. You are drifting into the long, slow, Nordic sleep.